Hey everybody, welcome to another match in the Challenger, the Tier 7 British Turreted TD. Still in the same platoon as last match. This time Comfort Nancy is in the T43, Primal is in the ISU 122S. We've ended up as bottom tier in a Tier 9 game on Moravanka and got the South Spawn. Welp. We do have some other decent players on our team. Our AMX 1390 and Object 416 might actually pull their weight. Our T95 isn't terrible, and our MT25, for what it's worth, is supposedly decent, but he is in an MT25, and so that's going to work against him. It can be quite a strong tank when it's not thrown into a really heavy match like this, but I don't see it doing much outside of maybe a bit of passive scouting before it gets blown up. For their part, the enemy team have quite a few heavily armoured tanks, more than us at any rate. I decide to head west and post up on this hill. Now, for now, I'm staying as far back as I can, behind camouflage, in a very slight hold-down position, but it's not really covering me very much. I want to see if I can get side shots on this JT here. Unfortunately, he is behind a building. And the second TD, which is the JP2, I would imagine, its tags running off the map, is outside my render range. Of course, quite a lot of enemy tanks are headed this way. In fact, it looks like the majority of their team. And they've already got tanks on cap. For our part, the IS-3, our own JP2, the T-30 and the IS-6 are still moving into position, although they won't move far once they get there. I spot a Ferdinand with its side turn to me. Myself and the 416 immediately begin working on it, as does Primal. And although we nearly kill it, we just can't get the final shot in before it dives behind the hill. And so I go back to looking for shots on the JT-88 for a moment, but he's still behind that building. Looks like the enemy are actually going to just fast cap us. We need somebody to hero reset. I'm not eager to do it because if I peek over that hill, I will get alpha struck and removed from the game immediately by all those tanks. I just cannot drive in front of them. Thankfully, we are able to get a reset in, more or less at the last moment, and I do now have shots on the JT-88. So as I pull back a bit from the tanks in front of me, I start throwing shells across the map at him, but I'm only able to get one off before he cloaks up again. Now, looking at the situation in front of me, I'm going to have to do something about these tanks in cap. I can't ignore them for very much longer. In the meantime, though, I can get some shots into their support. The T-25-2 carelessly exposes himself and eats 2 shells for it, and the T-50-41 has his side armor turned to me, which I can actually pen at this range quite easily. I'm able to get 3 damaging shots into the 50-41. Before he pulls into cover, and then I begin bouncing. 25-2 shows himself again, but not enough of himself, and you get reliable hits, and so I decide to push around the right side of this hill, risk taking a hit or two, but get a good reset in. The enemy Wheezy is the one with all the cap points. And there goes the reset. The T-95 actually pushes into cap and begins face-fucking the Wheezy, which is good news for us. Unfortunately for me, I take a big hit, probably from the Tiger 2, in which case it was a high roll for him, and that removes over a third, in fact, of my health. The enemy Panther 88 is sitting completely up in the open with his side turned to me. What's more, he's ignoring the fact that I'm shooting him, which is very nice of him. It's allowing me to farm easy damage. He finally wakes up, but I'm able to get one more shot into him before he's in cover, and at this point I look for shots on the 25-2 to try and remove his gun from the match. He smartly backs off. 54E1 is behind the ISU's wreck. There's nothing I can do about him at the moment. I'm going to have to wait for these guys to crest the hill again. In the meantime, we put some tanks in cap, including the T95 and Comp and Nancy. And now I just have to bide my time until these guys pop up to try and reset. Meanwhile, in the east, the enemy JT-88 and JP2 have killed all our tanks there, and the 1390 is pushing ahead to scout for them. We do have a 54E1 trying to work his way in behind them to finish them off, but at the moment, what's going on in the east doesn't really matter. Those TDs won't get here in time to really disrupt our effort to defend the cap, so that 54E1 really should have stayed with us. In the meantime, the T95 rides up side on to the T54E1, throws away all his hit points, all of them. So we just had a full health T95 right by cap, and he just threw his tank away. There was no need for that at all. We're now at even numbers with the enemy. Both teams are running low on hit points. Our 416 manages to take out the Panther and the IS-3, the E50. So this is beginning to look pretty good now. All that's left is a very low health 54E1 and a low health Tiger 2, as well as the AMX-13. Unfortunately, our IS-3 is aiming at the Tiger when the 416 scoots into his line of fire and eats the shell. I'm too low on health to survive the 54E1 clipping me, and my shot goes well astray. I'm hoping by this point that we've done enough damage to seal a win. Unfortunately, our team is spread out from arsehole to breakfast. None of them are supporting each other, so we lose the IS-3 to the AMX. The 54E1 is on the wrong side of the hill to support the T43, and the T43 is not aiming. In fact, he actually was, but he was struggling to get hits on the 1390, who is pretty fucking quick. So, Competency was the only one that actually bothered to stay near the cap. The IS-3 was near the cap, but wasn't really paying attention. And the 54E1 ran off to do whatever. I'm not sure what the IS-3 was doing that allowed a 1390 to get that close to him without being hit. I guess he just juked his shell or something. It happens, it's a 1390, but unfortunately the 54E1 goes down. Competency is left with 165 hit points. He's not likely to be able to pull this out, even if he hits his shots. Sure enough, he gets pincered, and the 54E1 gets a finishing shot in there. There's not really much he could have done against that. If he shifted his attention to the 54E1, which he might not have even penned, then the 1390 would have just dived on him and clipped him, whereas focusing on the 1390 as he was doing, the 54E1 could just pop out and get a shot in. So he did put in a pretty good effort there, but there's not much you can do when you're alone against a tier 8 light and a tier 9 medium in a tier 7 medium that's universally regarded as not exactly great. So I wasn't I was pretty pissed off after this one. I was not happy at all. I ended up doing 3,256 damage. I can't remember if I got any unspotted. I don't think I did. And this would have been a quint, because this was during a quint event. So this would have potentially been about a 10,000 XP win. And, I mean, I was saying before, the Challenger is no fun to play, and I really want to get out of it sooner rather than later. That would have helped me get out of it sooner rather than later, but instead of 10,000 XP from a single match, I ended up getting about 900 or 1,000 or something, because we lost. Because of a loss. Now, to be fair, the IS-3 probably couldn't help hitting the 416. The 416 is extremely fast and they tend to move pretty unpredictably. It looked like it just drove straight through his line of fire and ate the shell meant for the Tiger. There's not much you can do about that. We've all done it. As far as the T-54E1 goes, I think he was the one that really dropped the ball. Although he ended up with 4 kills, which is of course the pubby success metric. In getting those 4 kills, he threw our teammates in the West under the bus. The IS-3, for whatever reason, was unable to defend himself from the 1390, and Comp Nancy was out of position. He couldn't really support the IS-3 from where he was. He was spread out behind a building. So, I mean, it's a pretty strong case for actually sticking closer together. You've got to make sure you have line of sight on your teammates if you are all that low on health and there's an enemy light tank scooting around, but hindsight's perfect, and this match was anything but. So at the end of the day, not really much anybody could have done, I guess, except the 54E1. But even then, I mean, as we saw, he had a chance to kill the enemy 54E1. I'm not sure how much of that was him being bad and how much of that was the 54E1's terrible, terrible accuracy. But I guess this was one we just weren't meant to win. So, in the meantime, I'm going to have to figure out a way to either tolerate this damn thing to get through it, or I'm going to have to save up for probably a couple months and just get enough gold to free XP my way through it, because I really just don't enjoy it. It's not very fun to play at all, and quite honestly, I think it needs maybe a few buffs before it becomes an actual viable tank destroyer. Because at the moment, it's not very viable, and it's certainly not very meta. The only reason to play the Challenger is to get the Charioteer. After that, there isn't a point to it. The Achilles is, by account, better for its tier than the Challenger is, and I can tell you right now the Firefly is better for tier 7 than the Challenger is, and the Firefly is a fucking tier 6. So it really just doesn't have a place in the game other than something you grind past. And although there are a few other tanks like that in the game, most of which do sit around the lower tiers, I think Wargaming really needs to quit fucking around adding more and more power creep and start looking at giving those tanks a bit of attention. Anyway, thank you for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. I'm sure you enjoyed it a lot more than I did, since it wasn't, since you weren't the one that had to play this match, you just got to watch the outcome. It always makes me feel a lot better when I watch other people lose games instead of me lose games, so there's that. It's kind of therapeutic. As ever, I wish you the best of luck in the field. Remember to stay close to your teammates late game when everyone's low on hit points, because really that one missed shot can mean the difference between a win and a loss. So support each other. You don't want to stay piled up on top of each other because it's just baiting an arty shell, but you do want to make sure that at least one of you at all times has a line of sight on your nearest teammate. So, as long as everyone can get defensive fire over at least one teammate, you should have a much better chance of winning. And it's something you don't really see pubbies do. Anyway, I'm going to cut this one here, so I will see you on the next video.